Margaret's like the big old bear hybrid.
Just coming up
Spread. Sniffing around.
Is she feeling already?
Well, she's
Yeah.
Yeah, she's doing it.
That's good. How are you guys?
Good. How are you?
All right. Oh, it was fun. It was a good day. Maybe outside, you know?
Yes. Good. Yeah. Crazy growth right at the end of the semester. So, yeah. I've got
Is it
a whole group
mountain or?
students that are like finishing up, which is good. Makes things it's ratchets up to a whole other level. So, but you teach a lot of classes. Usually about 3 a year. It's not on the placement session. In the spring and
Oh yeah, I love that one.
you just always take
Bridge never flew now. Yeah, we've been
I'm falling one step.
I know.
Yeah, class. We'll do a class. So, Office of Relevance is all the major projects before kickoff. So, yeah, and we also have some other students. No, definitely not. That'd be great. Yeah, I don't. We keep ourselves pretty busy.
Oh, I know. They got intensely like use the material. For that, yeah. Oh, that's a smart thing. Dump it in their lives. I would like to sit in the vineyard.
Oh, yeah. Well, you might have time, I don't know if they'll pay here. We don't know if little kids are going here. He's gonna tell no, Saturday. I told her.
We did just fine. There's no bad options. That's one thing that happens when you look at it is, whatever feels like the best situation.
I'm crossing you in the hallway, but I never introduced myself. Captain Bailey, nice to meet you. How about that?
Right. Yeah, you want to find something that
I don't think I do, but.
you want to use
Well, and you are?
quiet something.
Oh, yes. Are you consulting for the, so I have that. I was part of the search.
I don't even have a chance to have this thing. All right. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning.
Okay. Okay. So, well, here, I'm going to talk about.
Good morning.
Sorry, you should out there. Usually come sit in here.
Hi, nice to meet you.
I hesitate to take this.
I knew your mother. Yes, not real well.
23 minutes.
Seeing her in church.
Good.
So that's nice.
All right.
Yeah. Right.
If I get here late, somebody's sitting in it, then I get out.
Right. That's a nice feeling.
Barry, how are you?
I'm good. I'm losing my voice, but I'm good.
Right.
Good. Oh, gosh. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Good morning. The Lord be with you. And also with you. Good and gracious God, for this day, for the beauty of sunshine around us, for the promise and hope of Easter spring, for the gift of resurrection and life. We give you thanks for the faithful people of this cathedral gathered together in this place, that they may know and share your love in all they do. For the work of this staff, give us wisdom. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Good. So this morning, my computer somewhere and my phone, which also had notes on it somewhere, so I'm doing what I think the first job of the interim is to do, and that's called wing it. Because that's really what happens in the life of the interim. I was asked to talk about what does it mean to be an interim. But what's going to happen is that as I say a few words, you're going to think, that sounds an awful lot like what a priest does, because that's exactly what I'm doing. So an interim is called to preach the word and administer the sacraments. So was your next dean, and so was your last dean, and any other priest you've had on the campus, to proclaim God's word and to see that the sacraments are rightly administered. Since my arrival on Ash Wednesday, and with Dale's departure, bless him in his journey, all I have been doing is preaching the word and administering the sacraments. It's kept me quite busy with our round of services, as I zoomed in 5 minutes late to the last one. So I'm watching my watch. The other role, another role of the interim is to navigate the systems that are already in place. And so it's early for me to tell you what your systems are that are in place. And I'm really just learning a lot about how life happens at the cathedral now. Not necessarily, a little bit about how it happened before, but my emphasis is how are we doing church? What committees are working? What committees aren't working? Who's doing what? I haven't been to finance yet because I know they're working just fine. But I'll get there. And so it's learning the ropes and seeing with eyes that come from outside. Interims usually have a bit of experience. I have a few years, and so I've been around a few churches. I know how places work and don't work, and so there's a sense of what I'm looking for in terms of what's the health of the parish. You know, every single parish, of course you're the exception, is that when you're going in through a search process, we have nothing wrong, and we're going to charge ahead. And you are a healthy place, but there's always things that we need to look at and have a chance to figure out what those things are. The other thing that an interim does, you know, part of the calling of an interim, we don't need to change anything. We're a church, and in spite of being Episcopalian, we do change, and we change every minute is the truth. If we're not changing, we're dying. And so by the fact that I'm here, you've changed. And so there are little tweaks and twists and turns. Some things you're going to notice, some things you won't notice. Some things I've done on purpose to see if anyone does notice, because it's part of my job. And it might be little, but if someone says, you know, why is that different? That's part of what I'm listening for. So you all have homework. It's like the highlights magazine, you know, where you have to find what's wrong or what's out of place, or what's right, hopefully. Watch and see what's happening in the course of our life together. And there will be changes, just because I am who I am and you are who you are, and we're going to interact, and there'll be needs that need to be addressed as we go forward. And so, and staff changes, and so suddenly we've done bilingual liturgy not once, but maybe 4 times already. Who knew? It certainly wasn't what I knew when I was coming here, that would be part of what was happening. And it's been wonderful. I mean, it's not been easy, but people have been excited, and there are drawbacks to that, but there are also some immense advantages. We are bilingual again at the picnic. We have seniors graduating from our Spanish-speaking community, as well as seniors graduating from our English-speaking community, and we're going to celebrate everyone together. 11 o'clock, June 5th, this is my advertisement. Part of my other job, be there, mark your calendars, Dimmick Park, which means you'll hear a story about me cutting the grass on the banks there, because that was my summer job from 14, 15, and 16 years of my life. What else does the interim do? The interim comes with who that interim is. And so you get me, my partner Mark. You know, we're here, we're participating in the different activities, the social activities, you get to have a sense of what it means to welcome a priest into your space. Because after 13, 14 years with Tony, you had a pattern of the way that you related to a priest. And so it's a chance to rethink how that relationship occurs. How do you interact with that person? How do you want to interact with that person? What are the boundaries that should have been kept? What are the boundaries that should not be kept? And how do you go about doing that? The luxury of an interim is most of us, we come and we go. So I can make lots of mistakes, and so can you, and it'll be distant memory whenever that day comes. On this third Sunday of Easter, it's the story, and you'll hear it yet again, and some of you have heard it already, the feeding of Peter's commission by Jesus to feed my lambs. It's the sacred text that all priests hear, usually at their ordination. Feed my sheep, tend my lambs, feed my sheep. And so the job of the interim is to love you, to be in your midst, to try to figure out all your names, and which seems always a too short a time. Trust me, the 13 years at St. Asaph's was too short a time. For priests, many of us, it's hard to make that transition. But our job is to love you. My other job is to listen. And so what I really want to do today is hear what your concerns are, what your needs, what you think the priest should be doing, what you'd like to see happen. There is nothing out of bounds. And so, the smallest thing I have to be careful because I may suggest something and I'll have to do it. The smallest thing we should be singing the doxology after, we should be collecting the offering and singing the doxology. Where are we on the pandemic? Today we're collecting offering. If not, it's next week. We're back to that routine. And yes, we are singing the doxology. So it's back. It's a seasonal emphasis. But it could also be, we haven't had campus outreach in the last 10 years. How can we make that happen? Because part of what's happening with the interim process, it's not that you're dreaming about what you want, but it's also how do you get it started? Because you want to hand these things to the next priest. You want these things to be happening. You want the seeds to be sown. You want committees up and running. You don't want to wait. That's one of the worst things that an interim can do is just say, okay, we're just going to wait. We're just going to hold for it because things will grind to a halt. And that's not good for any church. It's not what we're called to do. All right, questions, interaction. I talk fast. I'm in Philadelphia.
So I have a question, and so you say that specific job description is to preach and do the sacraments. So how much, is this a subjective thing, how much you interact with the search committee as far as I know you can't influence who the next person is, but as far as helping the search committee, think about things that should change or could change or don't need to change, or is it more step back from that and let them do their own thing?
Right. So the relationship between the interim and the search committee has always been a very hard and fast separation. So my job is to interact with the vestry. And the vestry needs to be interacting with the search committee, of which several members of the search committee are on the vestry. I can give a little bit of advice, but really the job of the interim is hands off the search committee. The bishop's staff should be interacting with the search committee. And so any questions or advice that the search committee needs about process is the bishop's staff. In terms of life at the cathedral, it's the vestry. And the vestry needs to ensure that, in the last 10 weeks, we're doing all this bilingual stuff. We really need to push Spanish to the front of the profile. It may already be there, I don't know. But that may be something that, with Dale's departure and fortunately or unfortunately my semi-ability to speak Spanish, we've been able to sort of navigate that. But we need someone who speaks Spanish. The other job of the interim is to fill staff. And so there will be a candidate for Dale's position, not specifically the position that Dale was called for, but there will be another associate on staff. I'm sure, please, before the next dean comes. So staff positions are the responsibility of the interim. I do assure you, whoever comes will really appreciate there's someone at the other end of my hall. Yeah.
And so that associate would be not an interim associate, but a permanent associate?
So because of the nature of the call and the job, what I've been talking about with the wardens and the vestry is that we should be just calling a curate, which is a 3-year term. That way the next candidate isn't saddled, but has options. And there's always navigation with the 3-year term, but anyone coming out of seminary, and that's really where we're looking right now, those are the only candidates. There's a pre-shortage, many of you may know that. The candidates we have are going to be younger, coming out of seminary, need a 3-year call. They're not going somewhere for a year. They have to put their 3 years in order then to go and do something else. We're going to get a good candidate. We're the cathedral. This is a good place, and so I'm convinced that we'll have the right person. And like I said, whoever comes in after me, whoever's the next dean, will be appreciative of having the person. But yeah, it'll be a 3-year call with some navigation. If it's oil and vinegar, then there'll be a 6-month process. But I'm convinced that it'll be a good mix. The call process is, my understanding is that you may be getting to see your profile this week. And so it's 12 to 16 months from there. So if we get a candidate that starts in September or please July, they've already completed almost half their term by the time the next dean comes in.
I'd like to remind everybody, maybe people remember, that Tony was a curate here, but he finished seminary, and Bob Campbell was just retiring. So it's the same time situation.
Right. And I did get to visit with the dean. He wanted me to commend whoever I saw. I said, that's a lot of people, so I'll do that right now. Good. What else?
You already answered my question. So, I'm good.
Connie.
Bringing people back to each other. The pandemic eliminated a lot of people. And then, of course, the transition, not having a full-time priest, I'm sure some. And I'm not sure my question is, except do you go out and look for a different congregation altogether, or do you look to get the old folk back? I guess that's my question. And don't say it's a little bit of both, because it's a cop out.
I'm not going to say it's a little bit of both. I'm going to say the answer is yes. So, in my years as a priest, the honest answer is that there is a new congregation every 3 years. And that actually is shrinking. Some places are experiencing a new congregation every 2, maybe even every 18 months. If you can imagine, that's how quickly there is turnover in our parishes. Now we're in the lovely, sleepy Lehigh Valley, thank goodness. And so a lot of people are a little more permanent. But it's amazing the mobility that is out there in terms of the upper middle class, which is what mostly Episcopal congregations, I'm talking about a particular demographic, are highly mobile. Our older tier are all moving to Florida. Although our oldest tier, like my mother, we're being taped, I have to be careful. We're encouraging strongly to move back to the Lehigh Valley. So there's a whole sense of movement, and we have that happening here. I know folks who are faithful at 8 o'clock. I have one couple in mind who I know are packing up and going to retirement in Lancaster. And so it's a reality for the Episcopal Church. We are changing. The question then and it's a good time. Interims are good. It's a good time to ask those hard questions at vestry. What does it mean to be a church that's not only in transition now, but recognize that we are always in transition? And how do we continue to be vibrant? How do we have ministries that are well-staffed, supported? A lot of the models are going to more staff, because those are where you get consistency. When you have staff who are in charge of particular projects, not that it means replacing leadership, it means emboldening and empowering lay leadership to do the jobs that need to be done. but it's good to have point people. A lot of churches are moving to sort of a project model or a seasonal model, so that the Easter season is about this, and people are committed for the Easter season, and then there's a transition, so that folks who are transitioning get to participate fully in that process, but then in the next season, there might be some change or transition, or different talents, different things. So I'm answering your question both and, but how do you get people back? Everyone is asking that question. Every church is asking that question now. What does it mean now that we're in, I don't know, post-pandemic, endemic, not quite end of pandemic? We still don't know. Clearly, we're in a different phase.
Do you see your role as helping to bring people back, or are you kind of in, look, I'm here just to keep us afloat? Or do you see that you have an active role in?
I'm not keeping you floating, I guarantee it.
Okay.
You're keeping yourselves floating. I have a long list of people I want to visit. I am slow. It's just been impossible. One of the things that the cathedral needs, from my perspective, you need a visitation clergy. And we've had different people who have done that role in the past, but we need somebody. You've got 150 folks that need visiting. That's a full-time job for somebody. And we have a great cadre of volunteers who go out and make sure that folks are getting the sacrament, at least see a face. I've done maybe a funeral every 10 days since I'm here. It's part of who we are. But it means that my time is being taken up with those particular sacramental duties, and I'm not able to do quite as much as I'd like in terms of visiting. But I'm slowly getting out there. Invite me to dinner. And I know what else.
Then my question should be.
I know what else we share.
What should we be doing?
And we need to.
I guess
so,
that should have been my question.
So one of the questions that I have, and it's been talked about. How do we rebuild hospitality? How do we become welcoming? How do we meet new folks when they come through the door? I don't know if you're new or not, which is actually a gift, because how are you? What's your name? You live in the valley, Well, this is my second time here. I'm like, well, this is my fourth time here, So that's an advantage for me. But although you don't, I look at somebody and say, do you know who that is? No, which is an issue. When you're a place like this, the more groups we have that are small and intimate, so we can learn each other and learn about each other and care for one another, the stronger we are. And so 321, for example, it's a smaller group, and I think those folks generally know each other, but maybe not. And so how do we then create opportunities for more fellowship? And I don't know yet. I'm running from 8 o'clock to here, and I need we need another body who can help navigate. I would say Dale, who is that? Who is that? Who is that? And Dale had that knowledge, but Dale didn't always, I don't know either. It's part of who we are. But how do we spread that? And so hospitality is one of the key issues. How do we have individual groups that have chances to come together? And it's not about, partly it's about helping groups that are already established to do what they're doing, but it's also creating new groups. Because some of the old groups, it's hard to break into. Sometimes you just need to create a new one. So my first sermon, I talked about a bread guild. It's still, believe me, I like my bread. I'd love to get a group of people together on a whatever morning, Saturday morning or Thursday night, and bake bread to take home, to give away, to give to visitors, and also then to use at the Eucharist wherever that would be appropriate. If it's at 321 or maybe other services, I don't know where we are in that in terms of ready to do that or not. Those are other questions. Is the cathedral ready to do these things? What's the sense of the community? There are I've heard a lot about doing some really big things. You need someone who's here for a while to navigate that. Priests who come, if they're lying, if they say they're ready to do something after the first year, it takes 3 years. It takes 3 years. Then you can start doing things. You might do a few things. Tweaking the bulletin and making some changes, that's nothing. But if you're doing something significant, And we don't have much time to do that as a church. We need to be doing significant things all the time. We have to. We're losing. We're losing to the world. I always, we had Nelson, I don't know, was it I don't remember, was it last week?
Rivera.
Yeah, but Nelson Rivera, right. Was it last Sunday? Yes, it's Easter too. Thank you. And Nelson and I always talk about the worst day for the church was when Constantine declared that we were the state church. Because it made it easy. And church should never be easy. We should always be counter to the forces, except when they're doing the right things. But it's been a long journey for the church, to be sure. And right now, it's not the politics we're losing to, it's just the culture. Where are you going to spend your Sunday morning that's gorgeous and beautiful? Here, I hope. Yes, Marion.
I'm just a parishioner, but I can relate some experiences with interims. At Dean Whittemore's request, he was the rector when he came here. I built the double kneeler prayer desk that's now in the west transept there in front of the array of candles, although it wasn't originally built for that location. And he asked me, he got a dedicatory plate from the donor, and he said, now put this in an inconspicuous place. I don't want to see things around here that are ostentatious. It was a tiny little thing, not much bigger than the calling card. So I put it there, and then he was followed by the first of the interims I encountered, and I can see him, and I remember he was very popular, but I can't remember his name at this point. But he came to me and he said, the donor wanted the plate moved from where I had put it to around to the front so people could see it. And he said, are you willing to do that for me? And I said, yes, I'll do that. And that was the end of the matter. Now, my grandfather was a retired priest and lived in Chicago County, New York. And my mother used to take my brother and me up there in the summertime. And I can remember he did supply work, which is like being a sort of possible term for an interim. And one thing that happened was that he was asked to fill in for a Methodist clergyman, and in spite of being over the top high church, he did it. But one of the things he related to me was, or to us, was the Methodists who were then using a prayer book very much like our Book of Common Prayer used to be. The Methodists, he said, don't believe that Christ descended into hell. So that's admitted from the scripture, from the creed.
Creed, right.
So I have to be careful on that point. And then another time, somewhere up in that very rural place, there was a small congregation of Italian people that were using an Episcopal rite. And he was asked to fill in there, and he was very, he knew quite a few languages. He'd been born in the Netherlands sometime thereafter, but they wanted to have the service in Italian, and there was an Italian prayer book. but he didn't know Italian. But my mother had been a trained singer, and singers' study was
I have to know Italian.
diction,
Right.
which is being able to pronounce a language off the page without really knowing what it is. And I remember her drilling him in the Italian service.
Uh-huh. Yeah, yeah. Interims, a little different than supply, although sometimes supply ends up being interim because they're there all the time. Interims aren't part-time, we're absolutely positively full-time, and so expected to do absolutely everything that needs to get done. I was pretty good in Spanish through college. So the irony is that, unfortunately, every language I learned after that, I spoke like Spanish. So my French sounds like Spanish, my Greek sounds like Spanish. So it gets, it's fun. And I learn. Interims learn. I'm learning so much just in my time since I started on Ash Wednesday. Every parish has their unique qualities, and so I'm learning about doing new things. Go ahead.
What do you like best about being a priest? What's your favorite part?
My favorite part about being a priest. So I love when I am sitting in a place. If it's the dean's bench and I look out and everything is going just about the way I thought it should, and all I have to do is preach and preside. Then I'm like, yeah, this is a good thing. All the pieces are moving, and there's usually about a few seconds in every priest's tenure where that happens, where you don't have to worry about it. But us, I mean, if I think if a priest is doing a really good job, people are empowered to do what they're supposed to do. People are their gifts are matched with the needs, that people are celebrated for who they are, and that church hums. You know, people want to be there. They want to be there, and that I love that about being a priest. Definitely. Thank you. Yeah.
I think I remember being told, maybe it was by the bishop, when he was first talking to the vestry about the transition, that one of the roles of the interim is to prepare the congregation for the ultimate permanent being. So how do you do that? Is that some kind of a magical formula that's used, or how does that happen?
Right, I wish there were. Again, I think it's assessing the place, making sure that everything is up and running, whatever that is. Making sure there's a hospitality committee running, making sure that the finance committee has done a proper audit so that when the next dean comes in, everything is on the books, have had at least that review. Making sure that staff positions are as secure as possible. Whatever the committees are, preparing the staff as a whole. You need to be able to be flexible and change as we go through this. There's going to be a lot of transition. You're appreciated for what you do. We as a parish need to make sure the staff is appreciated for what they do so that they're able to weather this transition. Because more than anything, the staff is, all of a sudden they've got me who's like, I went this here, I went that here, do this. And so I have to be careful too. I'm sitting here.
Careful what you say. I'm not the staff.
No, but
I'm just related to the staff.
there is a daughter on staff. And I'm on camera too.
You are. I don't think she's watching though, so.
Yeah, it's on tape. I don't know. So, and part of it's just early for me to tell you, what I really am concerned about. But there are some things already that I'll be pushing to try to make us think through. And you're in the process of this amazing campus renovation plan. We need to figure out what that is. I haven't had a chance even to sit down with Richard since I'm here. A lot of things that have to just learn about to, are these happening? Where are we in this process? And again, to make sure that nothing is stalled, that stuff is happening. I know the sign is being worked on. There's definitely movement on that. That's good. We need to do some kind of sign that we're committed to the project. I don't know if I'm answering your question.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good. What else?
I'm worried about your sanity and your exhaustion level. So I know that there are some clergy in the area who are doing supply kind of fill-in stuff. So I'm just very excited that you're taking advantage of that.
Right.
What is your vision for the summer?
Right. So summer we're going to go to 3 services, 8, 10, and 12:30 still. So that'll help a little. I'm trying to put together a group of retired clergy who are willing to do a little bit more. Because many of you know we lost Michelle Moyer, who really knew how to do things here at the cathedral. And so I miss her. I mean, you really threw me a few loops when I and of course with Dale's departure, working hard to find someone to fill his office. It won't be Dale, but someone who can get on board and jump in with 2 feet, with support. But also then to identify a few other clergy who are willing. We have R.J. Williams, who was lovely, not really willing to jump in too much, but has filled in. I like scheduled 3 things at one time, one day, and said, Jane, I'm supposed to do Eucharist here and here, can you? And she did, so I had that option. I'm also expanding our horizons. Thank goodness we're in communion with the Lutherans, who are struggling as much as we are, but we have resources and some other places don't, so I don't mind calling on Dr. Rivera, who Puerto Rican, fluent in Spanish, obviously, and committed to ministry in the Latinx community. So if I can get him every 6 weeks, I think that will be wonderful, even if it's just the Latin service. He did tell me he would never do 4 liturgies ever again.
Yeah, he did think that was quite insane.
It's like, oh, come on, I'm doing it in a couple weeks.
I thought his sermon was great.
Yeah, he's a good preacher, thoughtful. Absolutely, he's a good guy. So I'm hoping we can get him back. But yeah, I mean, I'm trying. When I can, I have a very supportive spouse who said to me, "You are taking those days off."
That's good. Glad to hear that.
And so we did get a couple days at the shore. Not enough time, but I know. I will not keep the pace forever, but we're going to get through the Easter season, and then we'll be looking at how we can adjust accordingly. And we may have to do some things differently, but that's all right. That's all right. You've all been very wonderful and very gracious. She's been supportive. What else?
Is there anything that we can do better to support you in your time here, in the short amount of time that you've been here?
Right. It's all about asking questions, or saying, I can do this. And as I slowly, figure out who needs to meet and try to get times together, we'll get there. I mean, Altar Guild and I, we met early, thank goodness, because we know Altar Guild runs the church. And so I'm really grateful for their support. And they, I threw the team yesterday, I said, oh, by the way, I'm doing baptismal remembrance on Sunday. So can you just, they just graciously said, sure, we can do that. Again, I'm just trying to get my feet on the ground, and I think the phone will be starting to ring, or the email will be going out a little faster than it has been so far. But a lot of it's just been navigating some of the administrative stuff and making sure the liturgies are happening. It's exciting, but it's work.
I just want to throw out, I've never done baptism remembrance before, and that was quite a fabulous little thing you did this morning.
Oh, good.
That's not been something I've ever experienced.
We haven't done that in Easter at the cathedral.
Okay.
I don't know.
Not that
I just thought we always
participated in, so.
So part of what happens is that you've got a priest who's been doing this for a long time, and so there are some things I just always have done.
Right.
And I've always done a baptismal remembrance the second or third Sunday of the Easter season, and so you're doing a baptismal remembrance this morning.
What is baptismal?
What is a baptismal remembrance?
Are you going to church at 10:30?
No, I wasn't.
Oh, okay.
So baptismal remembrance is basically a liturgy where we give thanks for the water. The water is poured, there's a blessing of the water, and the priest takes the Spurgeon stick, which I assume that we've used it here before because it's in their sacristy. Although I assume that the thurible was used before. I was told it was only used once before.
Okay.
We did that at Vigil. But the Spurgeon, and you simply sprinkle the congregation at the opening of the liturgy, and people are invited to remember their baptism. The season of Easter is, it's always baptismal remembrance, but the season of Easter particularly is about remembering our tie to the death and resurrection of Jesus in the waters of baptism. So I just sprinkle folks, and somebody very kindly came and wiped up where I spilled. And, but it's just it's a physical way, one more way of remembering who we are as a people of God. And there are things I just always have done, and so someone will go, why are you doing that? And it's just getting in that rhythm of what the priestly function is. I have never received the sacrament first. I was always taught the priest is a servant of the servants, and so the servant eats last. And so theologically, it's against my brain. Dale did it first. Was his pattern. Wonderful. But my pattern was, so people at the altar had to learn, leave the priest bread. Because I had to go looking for a host, Oh, it's already gone. But it's just, it's my priestly understanding of the sacrament. So it's learning those things. But that's also things that you see, and then you ask those questions, which are, it's the way we continue to be in dialogue with liturgy and with our faith. I mean, those are, why is he sprinkling us? Remember your baptism. Good.
Since attendance is down and clergy is hard to get, have you ever thought for the summertime just to have one service at like 9 o'clock instead of the 8 and 10?
Right. So all wisdom says that if you change your schedule and reduce liturgies, you reduce the number of people who attend. And boy, this is a conversation that clergy have had forever. And we also have some cultural differences in that we've got a cultural group of people who really don't start their day until noon. And so it's hard to shift the Spanish-speaking part of our congregation earlier. It's just the tradition. I'm exploring what that means. We'll try at 11 for the picnic and see if, so we have to start at 10. Well, we're going to start at 11 for the picnic. We'll be ready to eat by 12:30, I promise. But hopefully we're going to be able to do some more blending of and figuring out how to do bilingual. It's hard. Once in a while, I think it works. Sandy has been,
She's your interpreter.
She cannot grow. She's been wonderful. A member of the cathedral, also on staff at the diocesan office. But it's hard when you're preaching in English and then it can work sometimes, but it's hard other times. So how do you do that? So I'm learning. And it may just have to be a much shorter homily than a sermon, just because you're getting a lot of information twice. Questions?
I'll just say the times you two have done that, I think have been fabulous.
Fabulous.
Yeah.
I agree
That's
completely.
the whole mood of it is, well, it's just fun to have it pointed out, there's not just one language, right? There's not just one thing going on here. It's really been.
It forces us to be engaged. The liturgy is an enormous gift, and it's a fabulous thing to be able to be in that rhythm. Part of what I'm sort of talking about today, although I think I've written 4 sermons for this morning. But sometimes we stop engaging in the liturgy because we know it too well. And so when it's getting thrown at you in Spanish and in English, you have to work. And liturgy translates work. That's what it is. Liturgy is the work of the people. And so when we stop working at our liturgy, when we stop appreciating or celebrating the way that we do liturgy, then we're losing something. When you're doing bilingual, you really have to, and some of the stuff in Spanish, when you look at the other column, you're like, how in the world can it be that many words? And then other places in the column, the English outnumbers the Spanish. Spanish is like, that's it. And there are things that don't translate. So I preached about weather vanes. It was a fun sermon. I started working on it in Spanish. I did my Google Translate, veletas. Good, I got it. There's no word for weather vane in Spanish. It ended up translating back into English as the meteorological rooster who determines the direction of the wind or something was the translation. Try saying that fast in a sermon in Spanish. But then the result was a dynamism with the Spanish congregation for that liturgy and that sermon, because everyone was trying to figure out what the heck a Valleca was. So I was like, what does that word? What does that mean? And so you have that engagement in terms of, because it should be a dialogue. It should be a dialogue. Often a silent one, but it should be a dialogue. Good. What else?
Maybe we should let you go so you have less than
Yeah.
30 seconds.
Yeah.
So you don't have to run into the.
I'm having the biggest glass of water, if I can find it, between here and the sacristy. I'm very grateful to be here, and you've been very kind. You better be for me to be here. I really have appreciated it, and it has given me the chance to come full circle, which I just am so thankful for. I'm just still sentimental whenever I'm standing in this place, knowing that I'm the fourth generation to have had the opportunity to be here at the cathedral and to serve in some capacity. So I'm very grateful. Please know that my email, phone, door is always open, and you should let me know. Let me know what you're thinking. I may not get to you right away, but I will get back to you. I've got the Google number works. I'm not sure why it's not ringing, but I always see that you've called, so I will get back to you. I have technology. Your next dean has to be fluent in every technology that's out there. Has to speak Spanish. Good luck. Go for 3 of the 5. But it's my privilege, so I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Good to have you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Glass, but a cup is better than
I am going to take this right away. It's allergy, whatever the white things are blooming. Every year that gets me.
I'll take it back.
Thanks, Laura, for not finding a plastic bottle of water.
Which I hate to say, I cracked open today during 321, and I was looking at it
You
going,
have to, it's okay.
I was like, I can't, and then I did.
Yeah.
So you're looking.
I had to use one yesterday at the diocesan event.
Yeah, I just.